Hey, good evening, afternoon, morning, whatever it is to you guys, American history students. I'm going to be recording these lessons, especially this week during Fair Week with so many students absent, but also for students who are quarantined, just to keep up on your notes. Okay. We finished up section one last week on our study of World War II, the actual fighting Americans at war. Now we're going to shift our focus to the European theater of World War II. And today, the big one we're going to look at is um, Germany, Hitler's decision to invade the Soviet Union, which we're going to see many historians agree that World War II could have ended slightly differently, maybe, or lasted longer had he not made that decision. So, kind of a mistake. Okay. So, let's look at the Atlantic Charter first. The Atlantic Charter was a secret agreement between Great Britain and the United States, between Winston Churchill and FDR. It was signed prior to Pearl Harbor. Essentially, FDR realized we were going to have to get in this at some point, and so it's kind of like an alliance signed between us and Great Britain saying we're going to be on the same team. But at the same time, both sides agreed that we would not be in this thing for any type of territorial gain. Okay. The charter would eventually form the basis for what would become, after World War II, the United Nations. All right. The UN, still with us today, world peacekeeping body that we'll learn about more after World War II. All right. So now that we got our troops all assembled and we got the American population ready for war, we got the economy ready for war, we're going to look at the first thing we got to do is get our troops to the combat because the fighting's not going to take place here. So we got to get them to Europe. All right. And this is going to be a tough task because Germany threatened all the shipping lanes in the Atlantic with large groups of U-boats called wolf packs. All right. We know Germany used U-boats in World War One, big time. They're going to use them again in World War II, and even more strategic, traveling in packs and sinking any Allied vessels in the Atlantic. In June of 1942 alone, they sank 175 ships. That's a lot of metal on the bottom of the ocean just in that month. All right. So the Allies had to develop more complex defensive strategies to get our troops across the Atlantic. Remember, in World War One, we used a system called convoys, where we're going to have the troop carriers, unarmed ships in the middle, surrounded by armed ships traveling in large groups rather than just a handful of ships at a time. We're going to do this again in World War II. Very successful. Okay. All right. The big one we're looking at today is Hitler's decision to invade the Soviet Union. If you remember, we learned about in the last unit that Hitler and Stalin had an agreement. All right. They'd signed a 10-year non aggression pact that essentially said, you leave me alone, I'll leave you alone. All right. And Hitler didn't want to fight a two-front war. Stalin and the Soviet Union needed time to industrialize his nation to be ready to face this eventual foe. So they agreed to that. But Hitler's going to say, fingers crossed, once he has Europe dominated, he is going to can't resist his ideal Lebensraum, living space of the Soviet Union. So this is called Operation Barbarossa, and Hitler would violate the pact he made with Stalin and attack the Soviet Union. Historians look at this as a big mistake, because it's not going to be successful, and it's going to be very costly for Hitler, and it's going to change the course of history after World War II, how Europe is going to develop too. This new blitzkrieg is going to launch into the Soviet Union. 3 million German soldiers attacked and caught Stalin by surprise. All right, he wasn't expecting this. The Soviet Union is going to lose 2.5 million men just in the initial fighting, trying to hold off the Germans. Now, as Germany invaded the Soviet Union and the Russians retreated deeper and deeper into their own country, the Russians destroyed everything in their tracks: factories, field, equipment, crops, livestock killed. All right. This is a scorched earth policy, okay, of destroying anything that Germany could possibly use to help them in this invasion, but they could not stop the Germans. All right. The strategy is, as the Russians are retreating, the Germans are getting further into the Soviet Union, but they're also at the same time getting further away from home. And so the supply lines get longer and longer and longer. And it's very difficult to keep 3 million soldiers alive when the food has to be shipped from 600 miles away. Okay, Germany was poised to take Moscow and Leningrad when, thanks Mother Nature, winter set in. All right, and invading the Soviet Union is a no-no in the wintertime. Uh, Thousands of Germans are going to freeze or starve to death during this time. Germany had thought they would beat Moscow before winter, and the war in the Soviet Union would be over, but it's not going to happen. And so they're going to have to survive actually one of the coldest winters on record in the Soviet Union. So they turned to the strategy of placing a siege on some major cities rather than attack, just surround the city. This one, the siege of Leningrad, is going to last 2.5 years and ensue a couple of winters. All right, and both sides are going to suffer in this thing. Okay, the Soviets were rationed 2.5 pieces of bread per day. Leningrad citizens would eat almost anything. There are stories of cannibalism, in order to stay alive when people would die. Unfortunately, who knows what they would do to stay alive. They boiled wallpaper because there was potatoes in the glue and drink the liquid. Briefcases, belts, anything made of leather. They try to soften up by boiling and try to eat or at least drink the fluid like a broth. So it's going to be bad, bad stuff. 1 million citizens in Leningrad died during the siege. During this time, Stalin continued to ask Britain to open up a Western front. All right, hey, come on, let's go invade on the Western front of Europe to cause Hitler to turn his troops around, at least half of them, and fight a two-front war again. In the Battle of Stalingrad, the Germans circled the city of Stalingrad, and then Russians encircled the Germans. And once again, another winter is going to set in. This is going to turn into deadly street fighting in Stalingrad, and eventually the Germans are going to surrender, and they lose 330,000 casualties. Stalingrad is seen as a turning point in the war. All right, Germany is unsuccessful in their invasion, and the Germans are going to retreat. And along the way, thousands of Germans are going to die on their long march home. Remember, there's nothing to survive on. The Russians destroyed everything as the Germans were invading. So thousands are going to die just trying to get home. The Soviet Union is not going to be happy with just defending themselves. They're going to come on the offensive now, and they're going to advance with the goal of unconditional surrender and to capture the capital of Germany, Berlin. Fighting in the east dwarfed fighting in the west as the Soviet Union lost 18 million people in World War II. And we're going to see the impacts of that at the end of World War II. Stalin is going to say, this is never happening to us again. And it's going to lead to the Cold War. All right. Hey, we'll stop right there. Put another one on tomorrow to keep you guys caught up on notes. Have a great day.